Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. Geez, the audio is really loud right now, but that'll change once it
it's
plays
loud
through.
to you, old man.
But hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Deep Six Podcast, coming to you from somewhere. This time, quite a ways from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Orlando, and Florida. In fact, as always.
Well, that was abrupt.
Yeah, it kind of just cuts off when we're recording because I don't have the automation on, but usually it just fades out.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. But we're coming to you from Orlando, and geez, I lost my place in my script. But
Florida. Orlando, Florida.
Yeah, Orlando, Florida. As always, I'm your host, Steven Spivak, and this week I'm flying solo, but fear not, as I am joined by my guest of the Gods and Monsters podcast, Mr. Art Miles and Gregory Mohn. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me here on the Deep Six Podcast.
Thank you so much for having us.
Good evening. First-time caller, long-time listener.
It was, May, I think, when I was here, May of 2016, and I announced this podcast, and we had talked about, for the longest time, having you guys on the show.
Yes.
And now here we are, finally.
You had announced that you were leaving Orlando.
Yep.
You were starting your own show with your brother, I believe you said.
That just really gives a testament of how lazy we are, that there's no way we're coming up to Philadelphia to do your podcast. But you know what? If you come back down to Orlando, Florida, we're happy to do it.
But Steven's always going to come back to Orlando. You know why?
He lives here.
He loves Orlando.
Oh, his girlfriend's here.
He loves Full Sail.
Oh, that's it.
And he loves the fact that WrestleMania is going to be here.
Oh, shit. That's right. Yeah. Oh,
WrestleMania.
Is this a PG?
It's whatever you want it to be.
Right on. Okay.
Right.
I'll keep my mouth.
It's listed as explicit on iTunes. So
Okay. We're fine.
But yeah, it's been, I think, 9 months since I was here and since we were talking about having you guys on the show. So it's also lazy on my part for not finding a way to get you guys to even be able to call in. We literally fought with the ability to have call-in guests on this show for since we started it.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks to torrents, you didn't hear that from me, we have software now where we can split the audio off of a phone call right into the podcast.
You just cut that part out.
You could go out of, like, for example, an iPhone, and you could go plug out.
No,
and
not
then
even.
Go in.
I just have Google Voice on the computer.
I
get them to call into Google Voice. It goes right on in.
Steven's good at this stuff.
So we could do that too, but we don't really have live content.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Calling in would be kind of pointless.
You guys
but
can't
we
even
could do
figure out
we
the
could do it.
Facebook Live audio.
Hey,
So
that's true, but it's
Facebook
all about a
Live
cable.
audio. There was a time we did 5 or 6 hours Facebook Live audio,
Yes.
no problems coming out of the audio board. Lately,
Apple
but
sends
Steven,
out an
Steven
update?
says he may have, it's the iOS update that may have done me in, because the iOS update is based on iPhone 7.
not
I can only assume.
That
not
makes a lot of
having,
sense because we haven't got it to
headphone
work since I did the update, and I resisted the update. I
makes
didn't want to
sense.
do it. People said, "Don't do the update. You lose all your contacts. You're not going to like it." And even going up to the next iPhone, I don't want to do that because you don't have your headphone jack, which is
Correct.
also the microphone.
Then you're screwed. Then what?
But I'm sure there's a plug for that.
There's an adapter that they give you with the phone. They also give you headphones that work directly from the Lightning port on the
Yeah,
phone.
the AirPods.
Mhm.
You stick them in your ear and you just run around. You're
no,
fine.
you don't get those. You
No,
have to
I know, those
spend
are
an extra like
$160.
$200.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It seems like pretty ridiculous for wireless headphones.
But I don't know. I have my gripes about having an iPhone 7. Like, the home button is no longer a button. It's just a touch sensor.
But it gives you haptic field feedback, right? It
Yeah, but,
vibrates on
like-
you or something.
But, like, I can't open my phone at all if I'm wearing, like, gloves.
Hmm.
So, like, I can't even get to the point to put in my passcode.
You know what? None of that matters because even if I've just washed my hands, my stupid thing won't recognize my fingerprint. So it's like,
Well, yeah, that's something else I noticed.
Stop it, Apple. Just
Now,
give
what
us
happens-
give us a real button that.
And what
really
happens
works.
that day when I get my thumb caught in a cigar cutter and then I've lost my thumb? And that's the key to
Well,
everything.
you should stop hanging out with Cuban mob.
That's also why you use more than one finger.
Mhm.
Yes, I only
I've
use
set
the
up.
thumb.
I think I've got 3 fingers set up, both my
Really?
thumbs and then one of my index fingers.
You can even use your nose.
Did you do thumb on yours?
I did.
I did as well.
Both thumbs, and I
like
thought
it.
I did one of my pointing fingers, but it doesn't. I don't know.
I like this. I don't have to ask any questions. I'm just going to answer questions.
No,
We
but-
can just talk.
But for those of you listening, we are emanating from what is now Gods and Monsters, what by
Soon.
the time you hear this podcast could be a parking lot.
Destroyed. He's not kidding, folks.
Yeah, they just announced literally, what was it, yesterday?
Yesterday
that
morning.
Everyone has 2 weeks, and we were recording on the 13th. Not exactly sure when you guys will hear this episode, but yeah, they announced that on the 26th, everyone has to be out. Which,
After, what was it? They've been here for about 18 months open.
Yeah, we had a year. We had
In
the
June?
anniversary in June. So
Yep.
yeah, we passed the 1.5 year mark. And we
So
will not
after
hit year
18
2.
months of this small business becoming quite something amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's get out.
Every week we came here, there was more stuff put in here. There's
Yep.
another huge cart of pop characters, or there's another Batman or an Iron Man thing. It's just, it grew and grew, and who I feel most bad for is Spider and Mouse. When you think of the building that they put into this.
Oh, yeah, all the art and
work
all the
that they
effort.
did.
And that's what I was saying. Like, I was here with Defiant Giant, as you guys know.
Yes,
Mhm.
you came on a couple of our podcasts.
Yeah, before the store even opened. I think they did a media day or whatever they wanted to call
Mhm.
it. And me and Ricky came out here, and we interviewed Todd. And he was so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed about opening this location.
Mhm.
And the mural that's right behind us right here right now, which we'll post links in the show notes where you can see pictures of the store, wasn't even half finished, I don't
Yeah.
think. And all of the wonderful theming that's gone into this place was just in its infancy. And now to hear that it's going to be gone in 2 weeks is kind of...
We don't know who the owners are. I'm just going to speculate. I don't care because my opinion doesn't mean anything. But I think Universal Studios has purchased the land, just like they purchased the land at Wet n Wild, which closed after being open since 1970-something. And they're just acquiring land a little bit at a time. They didn't get the opportunity to purchase, 50 square miles of land the way Walt Disney did in the
And
late 60s.
That was done secretly, wasn't it?
Yes,
under
it was done
many
secretly under
different
dummy
buyers,
corporations.
yeah.
It's a great story.
Mhm.
We're coming up on the 50th anniversary of when construction began here. I've been following all these because 50 years ago, last year, Disney made his announcement. Yes, we bought the land. And now we're coming up to the 50th anniversary when he passed away, too. But we're coming up this year, in a couple of months, the 50th anniversary of when construction began here in this swampland they call Central Florida. And because who knows, because of that, maybe that's why we're all here talking to each other.
Probably.
Because
What would be the reason why anybody would come
Right.
to Central Florida otherwise?
University of Central Florida, I'm sure, grew because
I
it grew because
I
of.
thought you were gonna say that
the fact
that would have been the draw.
Walt Disney World was built
nope.
here. That Universal Studios was built here. It was going to be Hollywood East. That didn't happen. But
No.
but thanks for calling.
They
But,
keep trying. They keep hoping. They keep hoping.
Yeah, they do. But Gods and Monsters, for those of you who don't know, is I guess the broadest term you could put it under is a comic book store, but it's so much more than that. It's a
whatever your
lounge.
nerd flavor is, you can
Yeah.
find it here.
We've said it many times before. If you come here and you don't find something for yourself, there's something wrong with you.
Mhm.
But it's a lounge, a gallery, a comic book store, a meeting place, a community, above all. And
The community's going to take a transfer to another location.
yeah,
I think.
and like we were discussing on your podcast beforehand on where they could possibly wind up, and the talk seems to be a smaller location, definitely.
Sure.
But
Which they're
we're talk-
quite happy with. It sounds like.
yeah. But it leaves me to wonder what's going to be excluded.
Well, when you look
Coming
at this
to a new
when you look
place.
at this place, I mean, this is 20,000 square feet, and for anybody who doesn't understand what 20,000 square feet is, it's big. It's a huge place. And when you're talking about pop characters and comic books and little sculptures and figurines and things like that, there's a lot of space in this store that is probably wasted, but
Just meant for walking space.
it's really nice to walk into this area and have the space because, all right. So let me just go on a tangent here. Let's talk about porno stores. When you go into
right.
Hold on. Certainly tangent.
when you go into a porno store, you have two choices of porno store you can go into. You can go into that weird, creepy place which smells a little funny and everything's tight and cramped and there's just stuff and
Premier
whatever.
Adult Factory Outlet.
Or you can go to a place like Fairvilla Megastore, which is upscale, friendly people. They don't judge. There's room to walk around, and you're not feeling weird. This I kind of say is the Fairvilla of
They should have put that on their billboards.
We are the fair villa of comic book stores, because this is not one of those places where you walk in and it's a little dark and you're just thumbing through milk boxes full of, or milk crates.
You said milk boxes on our show as well, but I know what you meant. Milk crates.
I didn't correct me. Milk crates full of old comic books. This is bright and there's so much to look at, and every spot you look, it's something really cool and different to look at. And they have everything that you might want to look at, including those back issue comic books in the milk crates.
That first year that they were open here, and we'd always come to a podcast right where we're sitting right now, you could always see a couple or an individual walk through the front door here and have that look of kind of like, and they take a picture of it. Like there was still that whoa moment about this place because of the size of it and all the cool things that they had to offer. They're still going to do that, just in a different location.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was telling Todd, for those of you listening who don't know, Todd Fisher is co-owner of the store. Earlier, I was telling him that one of the nicest things coming in here was that you had your space. You could walk around and you're literally not on top of somebody else, which I feel like that's kind of the drawback of going to most comic book stores.
Oh, yeah.
I would agree with that.
I think especially here in Central Florida, a lot of them are really tight, and they don't have enough room.
And dusty.
Yeah.
Old comics.
It's just old. And in the back there, you have the gaming area where it's like huge tables, huge wooden tables built kind of into the walls that you can just go and play tabletop games.
Huge tables. We did most of our podcasts there last year or the year before.
Yeah, I remember when we first came in here with Defiant Giant, that's where we would do the podcast that we did from the store.
It's fun to hang out at those back tables because they were huge, plenty of space for everything.
Yep.
You could live in one of those booths back there.
Comfortably.
But let's talk about you guys for a little bit. Art, let's start with you. Why don't you let the people listening who you are, what you do?
Thank you for asking, Stephen. My name is Art Miles. I've lived here in Central Florida since I came to school at the University of Central Florida in 91. 91, Greg? Yes, 91.
I don't know.
That was a fine year.
1991.
That was the year I was born.
Son of a
well, wait till you hear my story.
Son of a bitch. Okay, so 1991. That's the same year I also met Greg. We went to school at the University of Central Florida. We met at the fraternity, Phi Delta Theta.
Mm-hmm.
God, we've been friends ever since, 25 plus years.
Pretty amazing.
27 years. I came to school from South Florida. I grew up in Palm Beach County, in Palm Beach Gardens area. And when I came here, I wanted to, at the time, I was deciding on where did I want to go to college. And right around that time, Time Magazine had it on the cover saying, Hollywood East. Here it is. Universal Studios was getting built. MGM Studios is what it was called at the time, was being built. And it's like, if I want to have this dream to be a part of TV and film and stuff, I don't have to go to California. We could just go right to this school.
So that was the whole reason you came out here?
Yeah, I wanted to get into TV and movies and stuff. I wanted to be a movie director. I wanted to get into TV and stuff.
Look at you.
So when I came to UCF, I tried to get into the film program here, but they only accepted 28 applications, accepted 28 a year that got approved and put in. If I had come the year before, like a friend of ours that we know, there were no rules. It was, you wanted to come into film? All right, come on in. You're in the film program. But then it got to be so
lucky
popular.
Son of a bitch, John Membiel.
So, okay, I wasn't going to just drop his name, but okay, John Membiel got his film degree here at the University of Central Florida. He's gone off to do many great things, and we hope to see him someday here again. So I came here, graduated from UCF, started to become a video editor and a cameraman and a wedding DJ for a company in town, Tiffany Productions, and that was a lot of fun. I learned how to edit there on what was called the video toaster, which was just the two decks put together.
By the way, video toaster 4000.
Yeah, it was the 4000. How did you know that?
Because
I know
known
that.
I know things.
And fun fact, Dana Carvey was wearing a video toaster shirt in one of the Wayne's World movies because in real life, Dana Carvey's brother was one of the creators of the video toaster.
Oh, wow.
Look at all the fun facts we're getting on Steven's podcast.
Mm-hmm.
After doing that for 7 years, I got a job at Fox 35 News. That was in 1999. They only started
no idea
doing
you
news.
were there that long.
I know. They started doing news at Fox 35 in 1998. It was only just WOFL 35, and then
because they played The Simpsons and The X-Files, and that was about it.
That was about it.
Yep.
So they started doing news in 98, and I applied for a job. I got a job there in 99, and I've been at Fox 35 off and on for 17 years now. And along the way, while I was there, I met up with a partner of mine named David Martin, and we started to put a segment together on the news called The News Remixed. It was kind of like Tosh.0. We came out almost like the exact same time as Tosh. And where we watch things on the internet and
Not
we kind of
as
make comments
vile,
on it.
though.
Yeah, yes, definitely not.
I don't think anything's as vile as that show anymore.
we were restricted, but it was a segment that aired on the news. We were really happy with it. I got to be a comedy writer and write stuff.
Did anything ever happen to that?
Oh, it did. Yeah. Thank you for asking. Yes, our first 2 years we did really well. We were doing segments on the news, and we won an Emmy in 2000. And David won one for 2012 for host. In 2013, we won again for like the overall segment. And that was the first Emmy that I won. They won again like 2 years ago, and the segment just became something that grew into something big. We actually ended up doing a half-hour show called
I like
The
how
Q.
you just sort of gloss over the fact that you physically have an Emmy
Yes.
at your house.
Let's be clear.
For you.
This is a news Emmy, but it's
an
still
Emmy.
an
Still an
Emmy.
Emmy.
It's an
I
Emmy.
mean, it's like you could say there's Emmy, like Bryan Cranston has 5 Emmys for Breaking Bad. There's daytime Emmys. Susan Lucci has one, and I have one. It's a news Emmy. So yes, you can put me in that category of I have an Emmy, and it's in the cabinet, and that's awesome.
It's pretty cool.
And then after the news remix, we did something called The Q. It was a half-hour show that we did as a 6-week trial run where I was the co-host of a show that just ran as an experiment for 6 weeks. But since then, I've just mostly been working at Fox 35 as a news editor. It's been kind of quiet. 2 years ago, Todd and Anna said they were going to build this place, and I kind of got to know them and said, I want to be here and do a podcast permanently here. And that is the story of Art Miles.
So
That was way more than Stephen wanted to know.
No,
Ends
no,
on kind of a
that was.
downer.
I know he
there.
said we have an hour to kill, but it was like, son of a bitch, he's going
No.
back to like where he went to high school and stuff.
I like getting deep into the history of people.
But 1991, I met Greg Mohn, and we've been friends ever since, and we started a podcast.
You guys have been friends as long as I've been alive. How
That's
does that
great.
feel?
awesome.
That's super.
Can we take a call? Jesus. Go ahead, caller. We're going to take some calls now.
So Greg, let's move on to you.
Sorry,
then.
when were you born? I forget.
I was
91?
born in January of '91.
I was watching wrestling before you were born.
I own a car older than you.
I was watching Hulk Hogan lift Andre Giant up in the air 5 years before you were freaking born.
Oh, shoot, that's right. Yeah. Well, my story
That
is.
could be why I run a better put together podcast. Because
That's
I'm a lot
right.
younger.
He's from that
Probably.
generation.
You
that
know
just-
the technology
they're born with
easier. You
USB
just-
plug in there.
But yeah, Greg, to
Your
you.
brains are sponges. You just suck everything up. My story is a little less exciting than Art's, but
Well, I mean, you don't have an Emmy, so of course
I
it's
do
less
not.
exciting.
It's going to be less exciting than mine because you're not going to tell the whole story.
no,
but
of
that's
course
fine.
not. Of course not. I was actually born in Reading, Pennsylvania, not too far from Philly, where
Okay,
where
yeah.
you
How
grew
about
up.
that?
And I've been to Philly a couple times. I actually touched the bell and didn't break it, but so
Now you can only do that if you're blind.
Is that right?
Yep.
Oh.
They don't let you. You
If
know
you-
what? This world has gotten so screwed up.
Well, there was the guy that came in with the sledgehammer.
sledgehammer, yeah.
He came in with a sledgehammer and was like, "Oh, I'm going to ring the bell."
Screwing it up for everybody else.
Well, so we moved down here in 1981 or 82. I'm not really sure. I can't remember. And what happened? I'm sorry, I'm playing with that.
We'll set the scene. Who came down here? Was it you? Your
my
mother and
fam-
father?
The whole family.
Oh, the whole family.
Yeah, the whole
Yes.
family got transferred down here. My dad worked for Western Electric or AT&T or whatever that became.
Okay.
It was the Baby Bells.
Southern
that
Bell?
Got, yeah, it was the Baby Bells
Yeah.
or the Western Electric, or I don't know what it was at the time, but anyway, it got messed up, and
Bell South.
we got to move down here, which was the best decision, and I thank him often for that.
Oh.
Which I didn't really understand then because it was horrible. I had to move and leave all my friends at the time, but holy crap! I mean, you live up there, you know that
Yeah.
it's not great.
How old were you when you moved?
11.
I skipped that part of my story. I was born in Syracuse, New York, and I moved down
Okay.
to Florida when I was 8, and I was bitter for a while
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
you left everybody behind.
Sure.
Yeah,
Go
see,
ahead.
that was kind of my thing when I came to Florida. It was not necessarily something I didn't want to do, but it's a different way of life
When
here
you're a
compared
kid-
to being from a city.
When you're a
that's
kid, 8 years
up
old,
north.
11 years old, you don't really understand the the concept of relocating your
Because of
entire
a
family.
job.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, oh, Dad, why?
Right.
It's not fair. You know, it's just like, all my friends are here. Well, you make new friends, and it's a better
Like
opportunity.
it was that easy.
Yeah, people kind of crap on Florida, saying, you know, it's the butthole of them or
Right.
whatever. But it's
God's waiting place.
it's it's where dream comes to die. But
Aw.
I like Florida. I've lived here now for 34 years, and shut up. And it's my home, and I don't think I could be happy living anywhere else. I do enjoy living here. Anyway, so went to high school here, went to college just a stone's throw from where I lived at UCF, and that's where we pick it up with art. After college, I graduated with an engineering degree after way too long in college. But anyway,
That's okay.
and made my fortune in semiconductors, and then I quit. No, that's not true. I got fired, laid off.
No, you're skipping the part where you used to work in the clean room. That's a cool story.
Yeah. I mean, I worked in semiconductors, where you dress up head to toe in this stuff, and you work in a super clean room. You never get sick because the air constantly flows, and
Right.
it was super cool. I lost my hearing. It was great.
He could never have kids, but it turned out great.
No, that was my own decision. But anyway, recently I have started a new kind of profession in the last 10, 12, 15 years. I'm a photographer, videographer by trade, I guess I would call that. I don't necessarily do it as a job to get paid, but it's something that I do enjoy doing, and I've been doing it for a long time, and I think I'm pretty good at it. So that's kind of what I do.
Good enough to work with Stan Lee.
This is true.
Actually, yeah, I guess I forgot to even.
He forgot to be a name
Talk
dropper
about the
when you
cr-
could have
Yeah,
name dropped Stan
I-
Lee, George Perez.
I've worked with Stan Lee a couple times with interviews and recording some things, and then with George Perez a couple times.
God, what a name dropper.
Yeah, I know. I'm such a jerk. But lately, I have just been sort of transitioning into the world of YouTube, and I have a couple of YouTube channels that I'm trying to work on. One is based on cars. I seem to collect Miatas right now, so I've been doing this.
He's
Miata
not joking,
channel.
folks. He's
no,
not joking.
I have 3 of them now.
He has 3 of them.
And then the other one I do, I'm doing this thing where my love of movies and my love of models kind of came together, and I make a model sit down and watch a terrible movie with me, and then we review it.
Now, when he
And-
says model, folks, he doesn't mean those little things you construct with super glue.
no, these are women
There we go.
with actual, breasts and stuff. So that's sort of the thing that I've been doing, and that brings us up to about right now.
Wow.
Wait, he left. Okay, he left a bunch of stuff out. Now I
what
got a
did
ton
he-
of
I
questions.
knew this was
Oh.
coming.
What
okay.
happened?
Okay, you left a lot of good stuff out.
Oh,
I mean, a lot of good stuff.
okay.
And he says we got to talk for an hour. Tell the story.
When I dated the Playboy model?
No, that's a separate podcast.
Oh.
Tell.
But I mean,
we're
you
back
could tell that story right now.
Back to the
An
UCF
hour,
days.
2
I
hours,
went to
3
LA
hours.
a
It's all
lot.
the same.
No, I love this story. Back to the UCF days.
Yeah,
Tell, tell the folks at home what happens if you miss the first day of class and you don't get the syllabus for the class that you're sitting in.
Oh, okay. So it's very important. It's very, very important to go to your very first day of class. And it's also very important to look at your class schedule and go to the right place. Because what happened one day is I started a course, and I was late to the first day of class, and they had handed out the syllabus, and I missed that part. So I went to the first class, and I was only there for half the class or something like that. So then I went to the second class and the third class, and it was until deep into the third class where I realized this was not the course I was supposed to be in. I was in a totally wrong class. It was for criminal, what is that, for CSI type people? Criminal investigation type?
Yes, forensics.
Forensics. Yeah, I went to a
Jeez.
forensics class
And you thought it was supposed to be...
for 2.5 classes before I realized this has nothing to do with engineering.
So it was supposed to be engineering. You should have thought by like the second class when the dead body came out and you were examining it.
I was drunk for a lot of college, and either drunk or hungover. So it was very easily explained away that I didn't know what was going on.
Now, in Greg's defense, if I recall, that class you took, at the time, UCF was a couple of nice brick
Expanding.
buildings and some portables. But
Expanding
was
fast.
that class in the movie theater?
It was in a movie theater.
It was called UC6. It was
Yeah.
it was a
across the street from the school.
not a Cinemark. It was at AMC Theater, and they started the overflow classes were playing at the movie theater. And
Yes.
it's not like they've got writing on the doors that
No.
say, CSI class or engineering class. There were things on the door that said, Indiana Jones and Star Wars and stuff. And you just walked into the wrong theater.
I did.
Can't
Whoops.
fault them for that. It's just a good story. We all have stories
Well,
like that.
if we're going to talk about college stories, why don't we talk about the paper?
The paper. Son of a bitch. That's what I get for bringing this up.
Your fault.
Similar story. Didn't get the syllabus and got to the next class. Got to the class, missed it. Didn't get the syllabus to know that on this date, this paper needed to be done. It was like a major paper for like a good portion of your grade, 40, 50%, who knows. Girl sitting in front of me turns around to say something to me.
How deep into the class are we at this point?
The exact moment where you can drop the class. What was that? At the halfway point of a class?
it was
you could
halfway
drop it?
point, yeah.
Okay, we're at the halfway point. Girl turns around to me, and she looks at me, and she smiles, and she says, "What'd you do your paper on?" And now, what I said after that, of course, was, "Oh, what paper?" But then it grew into this thing with the fraternity house for years, where people would go and say it in slow motion.
Time stopped and went.
What paper? So my friend Bill and I were in the class. Both didn't get the syllabus, and I, of course, said, "What paper?" And then Bill was laughing like he would repeat it back in slow motion, like it was my life flashing before my eyes. What paper?
But didn't he also not?
He also did not do it. So at the add drop point, we waited for the teacher who was talking to the class to turn around to draw on the board. As soon as she did, Bill and I both got up and walked out to different exits and walked out of the class. Bill tripped on some books, which made her turn around and see us, and then the whole class laughed. I then presumed to go out onto that's what people say. I went out onto the lawn of the school and just started to roll around on the grass like, oh my God, I've never dropped a class before. I've never done this before. This is so bad. My parents are going to kill me. I'm rolling around on the grass, and my friend Bill told that story at my wedding because he was my best man, and he gave that speech at the rehearsal dinner. Thank God it wasn't the actual wedding. But then, to bring it full circle, one of my great aunts was there after Bill told that story, laughing in the background, going, "What paper?" Oh God, that's what I get for bringing up Greg's story. He had to bring that one up.
You shouldn't have skeletons if you're going to throw stones.
He's right. That's the lesson to be learned on this podcast.
I feel like I could cut in at any second, but just listening to the two of you go back and forth is fantastic.
We have a very small, loyal group of friends that have been together for about 25 years or so, and
we had like a second fraternity with them too when I bought a townhouse in Castleberry.
This is interesting.
And all the townhouses are connected together, and they make a giant square, and you live on the street. And I bought a townhouse because I knew somebody across the street. And she was dating another fraternity brother. He eventually moved in. But then 5, 6, I think at one point it was 8 of us that all either purchased or rented townhouses, and it was like our second college attempt.
We could literally throw
absolutely,
stones
or
at each
pull
other.
up the window and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" There would be sometimes I'd come home from work from editing weddings or whatever DJs, and I wouldn't even go home. I'd go straight to Greg and Bill's house, and we would just either Nintendo 64. Or on Sundays. Here we go. On Sundays, we would spend all day Sunday at Greg's house. It would be football, and then another football game, and then it would be X-Files or Simpsons X-Files. It was Fox Sunday night. And I would spend the entire day there. Greg built, have you ever seen the Lego movie?
Yeah.
One of the things that Emmett was very proud of, what was he most proud of? Do you recall something he created?
Off the top of my head, I don't
remember. It was
remember.
the double-decker couch.
Oh, the double-decker couch, yes.
Greg Mohn invented the double-decker couch in the early 90s and built it at the townhouse he lived in. So he had he had a sectional couch, he had a layer, and then he built an upper layer. And we have pictures of it. As a matter of fact, they're on my refrigerator at home of Kristen and I sitting on the double.
I need a picture of that.
Someone needs to send me a picture so I can put that in the show notes for this.
That should happen. I want a picture too because
I need a wide shot. It was her and I sitting on the upper deck because we would watch both football games. And then funny, we'd watch Fox 35 News. Mm-hmm. This is before I even worked there. And we watched Joanne Bauer. She was the solo anchor there. So she was like the first famous person I ever met because I actually got a job there. I was like, oh, God, that's Joanne Bauer. She was the original anchor at the 10 o'clock news on Fox 35. And we'd watch The X-Files and The Simpsons, The X-Files, King of the Hill, maybe it was the other one. But it always ended with X-Files at the end of the night. That was a full day at Greg's house.
And let me tell you, my girlfriend was so glad once X-Files was over, so y'all would leave.
Right.
Because
why? Never mind.
No, just
because it had been a full day.
Yeah, because
the first game's at 1 o'clock, so we'd be there for noon.
Yep.
She's in the kitchen cooking bubble bread. Remember bubble bread?
Yeah, she was good at that.
Do you watch South Park?
Here and there.
Eric Cartman had this at one episode where he was just so stupidly doing his own impression of himself, and Eric would say, "Hey guys, do you want this over here?" And he'd say, "No, Eric, you can go ahead and have it." I went into the kitchen. The bubble bread was the best. I was like, "Guys, do you want any of this bubble bread here?" "No, Art, you go ahead and finish the rest of that bubble bread." It was so good. Bubble bread. Fox Sunday nights at Greg's townhouse.
So that was the last time I actually understood what being social was about. Because once I moved out of that place and I moved into the house that I live in,
went from Castleberry to Apopka.
The last great party I had was the New Year's Eve 1999 to 2000.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to mention it. Greg, way ahead of his time when it came to doing things online. 1999 or 2000? What was it?
It was into 2000.
Into 2000, Greg was live casting from his Roadrunner Facebook page.
Jeez.
That was before anything. It was like where it was like he had it was video,
it was
but
video.
It was like it would refresh, and we were just people, all of us sitting on our couches. I was still at work that night because I had to edit until the news was over at 10:30. But I was watching it on the Roadrunner page of everybody showing up at your house and sitting on the couch, and then I showed up there. I met Kristen there, my wife, and we hung out there. And you were way ahead of your time. Is that Roadrunner page still active somewhere?
No,
do you think
that was a 30-hour party? So we had New Year's Eve 1999 into 2000, and then we got up the next day. Everybody basically stayed over.
We stayed,
and we were watching the bowl games. And again, same girlfriend. She was pissed. She just wanted you all out because
stayed the night, and it's all on the internet, or it was then.
It was at the time.
So that's been deactivated. Remember, it was up for a really long time, even though you.
Yeah, Roadrunner is no longer. Roadrunner is just not.
Did we go from Roadrunner to Bright House?
Yes, and then now to Spectrum.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry,
lesson.
Sorry, Stephen. We took over your podcast on Remember When.
I guess I'll ask a question then.
Mm-hmm.
You guys don't seem to have a huge history in the nerdy comic area.
It shows, doesn't it?
Kind of wondering how you wound up hosting a podcast associated with a comic book store.
Interesting question. Art?
Can we go to commercial? I think that I had talked to my friend that I work with at Fox 35, Rodney Dubé. He's been friends with Todd and Anna for many years before I knew them when he worked at that other place, that other comic book store. And Todd worked at this place. Screw it. It was Acme. Okay,
Yeah.
He worked at Acme.
Yeah.
And Acme started to expand.
The Coyote shops there.
Acme started to expand where they were going to take over the rest of their entire building. And I was sitting with Rodney at work, and I was like, man, wouldn't it be so cool if they're going to acquire that whole building now, if they would let us have like a space to do just like a podcast, someplace where we could meet every week and just talk about whatever, sci-fi movies, comics. I didn't read comics as a kid.
But here's where we do kind of fit into the nerdscape is that we're both huge on pop culture.
Sure.
Big on movies, big on television, that whole genre area. So as comic book movies became more and more mainstream and more, big, huge budget films and TV, I think it all just sort of blends together and
became pop culture.
It creates its own entity that we can fit into.
So Rodney and I were talking at Fox, and I was like, I'd love to, if they're going to do this, I'd love to talk to them. It's like, hey, it'd be great if we could do a podcast here. We'd come here every week to your location. And right around that time, Rodney said, oh, he's gonna go off and do his own thing. So I was like, oh, it'd be great. And then first, Todd and Anna, they shopped around and they went to the Oviedo Mall. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, Oviedo Mall. Because I tried to rent one of those spaces one time before. I had my own very shortly run TV show called Overtime with Art Miles. It ran on the ABC.
Yeah, he neglected to put that.
I skipped that part. I totally forgot. It ran for 6 weeks on ABC at 1:30 in the morning, Channel 9 here, ABC. And after those 6 weeks were done, I was like, I'll start shopping around. It's too expensive to do a TV show. Don't do it, kids. Just stay on the web. But I went to the Oviedo Mall, and the Gap had just left the Oviedo Mall, and that space was there. And Todd said, funny enough, they actually looked at that very same space. But then he said, when he told me about this, that's when I said, you know what, it'd be really cool if we could do a podcast about the Gods and Monsters place that you're building, but we want to be there during the construction before it starts. So episode 1, if you find it on our YouTube page of God Monsters Show, the YouTube page, you see Todd in episode 1. We start right here at the front door, and he walks through and explains all the different things they're going to build here. The 4th episode, each episode was, here's where the bar is going to be, here's where the Transmetropolitan Art Gallery is going to be, and then by the 5th episode, it was the grand opening, I think, and we've just been doing it ever since.
And he's been more than awesome in just letting us
Todd,
do whatever we want to do. And that's kind of what this podcast is, our podcast has become. It's just basically it's a whatever. Sometimes we have guests, sometimes we don't have guests.
Yeah, sometimes we talk about movies or sci-fi, or sometimes we talk about
we
Dungeons and Dragons, like our friend Bill
Sometimes
Sylvie.
we call indoor wrestling things that are happening here.
That's the one thing.
It's whatever they have here.
That's the one thing I think I will miss the most. If they're going to move
Me too.
here, they're
Me
not
too.
going to have enough space for a wrestling ring anymore.
Yeah, but I would think you guys could probably get involved in going out to those events and being kind of promoting the store and doing the preliminary thing and doing a podcast from those events.
I feel like they wouldn't really appreciate the type of podcast that we do
you,
during
you
the
have
show.
a good point.
Because although we love it and we both grew up watching wrestling and we totally respect the athleticism and all that, we kind of goof on it a little bit, and that's just our thing. We goof on
Fair
a lot
enough.
of things.
Well, when you bring a folding chair into a ring, you're allowed to goof on it a little bit. Yeah. What was it that they brought into the ring here? Was it bottle caps?
Oh,
Remember they poured them all in the ring, and
yeah.
then somebody was getting thrown on, and you're like, oh, that's silly. But then you see the guy come out, and the bottle caps are like
Stuck to
on
him.
his body. And it's like, oh,
Bleeding a
this
little.
is a real deal.
Yeah.
That was a great experience. That's one of my greatest memories here. Was the first time they said we're going to do wrestling here.
That was
We set up,
crazy.
we're going to do our regular podcast, and then the first guy that went flying into the ring, it was like, oh shit, this is for real. This is really
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
And wrestling for me had always been on TV all those years.
And you have that distance between you and the television screen. You're
Right.
just like, oh, okay, that's a thing. But when you hear these 280, 300-pound guys hitting the what do they call it? The tarmac? No,
The canvas.
canvas.
Thank you. This
When
is
you-
why Steven's here to answer our wrestling
Tarmac, it's not
questions.
an airplane.
True. Some of these guys fly like airplanes. So.
Some of those guys are as big as airplanes, too.
But I'll also say that we got to watch them build the ring, and watching what's underneath the canvas,
Fascinating.
it's wood.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
It's a steel crossbeam
Yeah,
and
it's wood.
2x4s and a gym mat and then a canvas thrown over top of it.
And they're getting slammed onto
Yeah.
that.
And they're jumping off ropes, and they're nearly taking out projection screens, and it's amazing to actually be in that proximity to watch that thing happen. And that was one of the coolest things that we were able to do with our podcast is being able to be involved with something like that.
Just to hear him get slapped across the chest. Every
Yeah.
time it was just like, oh, that really happened. That wasn't
Yeah.
just some sound effect.
That's not Ric Flair going woo. That's actually
Whoa.
skin on skin.
So fun
hitting.
story time for me now.
Yes.
You guys know who Jason Harvey is? Harvey he was on the Wonder Years. He was the kid in Back to the Future that said, "What's a rerun?"
Oh, okay. That was the older brother. Fred Savage's
Yeah.
older brother on the
Yeah.
show. Yes.
All right.
Okay, so he is or
He's
was
like a movie producer now, isn't he?
he
Or
is
a TV
business
producer?
partners with,
Damn, name
with
dropper.
Eric Bischoff,
Okay.
who, for those of you listening to the podcast, you probably know who that is. He ran WCW for the longest time under Ted Turner, but he was pretty much the guy running the day-to-day operations of WCW. They came in to work with Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, which is ran out of Universal Studios. So they would always go after the shows over to the Ale House across the street from Universal Studios
Oh, wow.
on Kirkman.
Mm-hmm.
And one night, we're in there after a show, and I'm just there, as a guy who's after a show wants to go get something to eat. And I'm friends with people who work for the company, not wrestlers, but people who just work backstage, whatever. Somehow, some way, Jason Harvey is there, and he's probably pretty intoxicated.
Sure.
And somehow I wind up getting slapped across the chest,
Awesome.
bare-chested, wrestling style, by Jason Harvey in the middle of the Miller's Ale House.
All right. First question. What were you doing bare-chested at the Ale House?
That's a very viable
That was the question. It was like, you let me chop you, I'll buy you a drink. Well, of course, if you're going to take a wrestling chop, honestly, the best way to take it is bare-chested.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, second question. When did the redness fade?
3
How many
days later.
days? Days, okay.
3
Okay.
days.
But like, what's other thing that's interesting about him is that he was actually involved in wrestling for a little while back in, I want to say, the early 90s.
Really, like behind the scenes?
No, like he's actually. I'm pretty sure his.
He was talent?
I'm pretty sure his godfather is Terry Funk,
Oh.
which interesting to know. But he, I think he had aspirations to be a wrestler.
Interesting.
But he.
He could have been built for that.
When
yeah.
I say this guy hit me, he hit me. Like it was crazy.
Wait, Steven, you're not a big guy.
No, but the thing is with taking a chop across the chest, it's not as painful as you might think.
Did your heart stop?
No,
Okay.
but
Well, when you take a chop in the wrestling ring, you tend to fall back as it happens. I'm guessing you didn't fall
Not
back at the Ale
necessarily.
House. You just took the hit.
No, usually they're against the turnbuckles. and
yeah, that's what I was
you
gonna
got
say.
Nowhere
But
to
I was right behind,
Against the
or
bar?
right in front of a table.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So I kind of had something to lean back on, but it was interesting. And then one of the bigger wrestlers came over after that and said, "Oh, let me give him one," and that's where I just walked off.
Let's rewind. Let's rewind about 5 minutes there. At what point, when you were taking your shirt off, and this guy was going to?
It wasn't so much that I was taking my shirt off. He's like, "Lift your shirt so I can chop you," because it's like wrestling. You know, it's what it is. You don't necessarily think it's weird to be shirtless.
I would think that'd be weird to be shirtless in a Miller's Ale House. But that's just me. That's just me.
Stranger things have
Maybe not
happened.
the Oviedo Ale House,
Oh.
but you know the Miller. Yeah, that's weird.
That's awesome.
But
Good story with a little Wonder Years reference there.
You know that one guy is actually the lead
No,
singer
he's not
for
Marilyn Manson. I know you were going there with that. Fred Savage's best friend on the Wonder Years is not Marilyn Manson. However, when you see the side-by-side pictures, you start to think about it.
Yeah,
Maybe.
he did
You
take
do.
out. He did take out have ribs removed though to fillet himself. That's what I've
I
heard.
can't disprove that.
No.
But back to you guys. So you never really dabbled into the comic book thing.
You know, I grew up in an area where my friends did have comics, and I never understood it because maybe I wasn't a very advanced reader at the age of 8 or 9 or whatever. I just didn't read comic books, and my parents didn't support it, or they didn't. We're talking 78, 79, and I think that if your parents don't really support you wanting to read comic books, maybe they're more interested in you going to school and reading, actual books, then you're just not going to grow up with that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the whole situation.
Were you the oldest?
I was.
See, I was as well. I didn't have an older brother to say, "Hey, check out comic books" or anything like that.
The difference between you and I, though, growing up, though, is that you had a very, very you were all about Star Wars stuff growing up.
Absolutely.
I didn't have that same sort of situation. I saw the movie,
Which is why he still hasn't seen Rogue One.
Were you
But
a
go on.
fanatic about anything as a kid?
No,
Really?
no.
You had what were your hobbies
I
as a
rode
kid?
bikes.
So you were just a kid. Like you were as much of a boy as a boy could be.
I was just a generic kid.
Right. You were out
I was
riding bikes.
Generic kid. In fact, there's an interesting story. One time we were at a construction site, and they were building houses, and I remember my friends and I got into a fight. It was like a planned fight. It wasn't like a "I hate you" fight. It was just like a war fight. Anyway, there were all these little.
So it was a wrestling match. It
kind
was
of
a planned fight.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it was more military because we
Okay,
were behind two bunkers, and all around this construction site were these metal discs about this big, and I'm making about a $50 size, and I guess they were cutouts or punch outs from these electrical boxes or whatever, but they were all over the place, and we decided, okay, let's start throwing them at each other.
Nice.
And when you throw them at each other, they do the spiral thing,
Right.
and you're trying to knock each other with them. And holy crap, was that a stupid idea? Because one of them hit a kid in the head, and it just opened up something on his
jeez.
on his
little vein or
forehead or
something.
something, and he's bleeding all over the place. And I'm thinking, 1 inch different, and he's blind. What
Right.
am I doing? This is the dumbest thing ever. But that's what being a kid in the 70s was. That's what you did.
It's true.
I
If there
love-
was a construction site in
Oh
your
my
neighborhood,
God. That's playground. Playground.
That's houses under construction, the 2x4s, and like you said, fighting and wrestling, and
I love the internet meme of what it was like to be a kid in the 70s, and it's a kid on a big wheel going off a ramp, and he's got no shoes or flip-flops on or something like that, and he's just
Yeah.
And it's like no pads, no helmets. You were just, that's what
right.
you did in the 70s. You were a kid.
Yeah.
And if you got hurt, you brushed it off and you just dealt with it.
I saw a great meme, real quick, similar to that. It was a split screen, and on one side it was these college kids who asked for like a day off after the election because Trump had won, and the other side of the split, it was like these kids wanted a day off because of the election results they were sad with, and the split screen to us is like we watched a space shuttle explode on the playground and we had to go right back to class.
Pretty much.
Jeez.
Yep.
I lived in South Florida. That was in high school, and I was on my I was at lunch break in '86, and you could see the Challenger just go up in the air, and you saw we're like, oh, the clouds just kind of, and then it was like they made an announcement, and it's like, all right, let's get back to class.
For us, it was so routine at that point, we didn't even go outside to watch the launches anymore.
Yeah, they were pretty routine.
We were just changing classes at one time, and some kid was like, "Did you hear what happened?" I'm like, "No, what happened?" It's like the space shuttle blew up. I'm like,
Nah,
Oh.
I didn't believe him. It's the same thing. I was like, nah,
Yeah.
we always joked like that because you'd see the trail go up, and
But yeah.
no, it really happened.
I don't want to say I went through something similar to
Well,
that.
9/11,
but, like,
you
9/11
must have,
was
yeah.
like fun fact about no, not fun fact.
"Thank you."
Fun fact.
Interesting.
That's how you get
to
phone
know.
calls.
I watched pretty much all of 9/11 unfold on television.
Absolutely.
As a kid, I did suffer from social anxiety and PTSD as a kid.
Because of
from-
that?
No, from
His time in Vietnam.
I don't want to talk ill of my father, but my dad had a problem with alcohol.
Okay,
and
okay.
These sorts of things. But I would do pretty much whatever I could to not go to school.
I think that's every kid.
Yeah.
But I would.
you
No,
to a
you had a
high-
legitimate.
I had
yeah,
like
legitimate.
I was crazy.
Yeah.
I would force myself to throw up, so my mom thought I was sick. Anyway,
little childish, but lick your palm.
Ferris Bueller.
but I was actually at my grandfather's house, and my grandfather was this guy who had this almost ritual of watching The Price is Right, the news after The Price is Right, and then The Young and the Restless.
Okay.
That sounds like
He was CBS. It sounds like CBS.
Yeah.
I was more
That's,
General
that's,
Hospital.
that's what
but let's
Art
go
did
on.
for 5 years.
So I would get there probably about 8 o'clock in the morning, 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. And he was outside mowing the lawn. He would mow the lawn before he would come in, whatever day of the week it was that it happened.
Tuesday, I think.
And I had on, I don't know if it was ABC or what it was, but I would tend to watch Regis Philbin in the mornings.
Sure.
All of a sudden, the news comes on. Plane flew into the World Trade Center. I remember so vividly going outside to my grandfather saying,
What age were you?
What was this? 2011?
2001.
Or 2001.
15 years ago? 16 years ago?
I was about 10.
Damn, that's a lot to process at 10.
And
Yeah, hell yeah.
and I remember going outside and telling him somebody flew a plane into one of the towers of the World Trade Center. He's like, "Oh, they'll rebuild it. Whatever."
Just call me when a second.
But
plane hits.
that's before anybody
it
had
was
knew anything.
instantaneous.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it happened.
And the early reports were a
small plane, right?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
remember Katie Couric saying that on the Today Show as it was happening. She's like, "It looks like a small plane,"
And-
because you forget how big that building was. And you're like, "Oh."
And then I remember watching the second plane fly into that building, and then
I
that's
can't
when
imagine.
like the world just stopped.
Yeah.
And I remember my brother, he was at school, and he said how they made an announcement, and it was weird because they didn't necessarily stop school, but it was just like you knew something was going
Right.
on because they didn't want to freak kids out.
Right.
So they didn't really make an announcement. They just made, kind of a general announcement that something was going on in New
I've never
York.
asked kids what school was like for that.
My
So
brother
this is good to
said
know.
it was the strangest thing. One by one, parents were coming to pick up the kids, and
Yeah.
none of the kids knew what was going on.
Was this up north?
Yeah,
You were living
this
here at
was
the time?
just outside of Philadelphia.
Okay.
Actually, it might have technically been in like the outskirt area of Philadelphia, so
Okay.
it might have technically been in Philadelphia.
close
But,
close enough to where parents were showing up at school.
Oh yeah. And it was the craziest thing. And
it's interesting,
And I bring it up real quick just because, you're talking about internet memes and whatnot. But it's like I saw something the other day where
I think I know what you're talking about.
people are saying how millennials are. I don't want to say whiny or whatever,
Yeah.
but like. We literally witnessed thousands of people die on live television
At a very
and
young age.
never had any kind of real counseling or therapy or anybody to talk to about it.
People falling out of the buildings on live TV.
That was that was
tough.
literally the worst thing for me.
Yeah.
Because my dad wound up like pulling up, I don't want to say a YouTube video. I don't even know if YouTube was a thing then, but
No, it wasn't.
it was some sort of internet video, and it was just stills of people falling out of the building. And I had like night terrors about this thing. And I remember the 1 year anniversary of 9/11, sitting at home and just being afraid to be by myself because you think the anniversary somebody's going to try something. You didn't know, whatever. It was a time where we had no idea what was going on. But I mean, I didn't want to
In
turn
2001,
this into a real somber thing. But
I was working nights, so I was working 12-hour nights. So I would get home at around 7:45 or something like that. I would go right to bed.
Is this the part where you tell us you slept through September 11th?
I slept through. I didn't wake up until about 4:00 that afternoon, and I turned on the
wish
radio.
I could say that.
Turned on the radio like I normally turn on the radio, and it was
done
balls
at
to
that
the
point.
walls, and I was like, holy shit. Then I turned on in CNN, and by then they were just constantly replaying all the events, and I got it all compressed in like 10 minutes, and I was just like, the world is ending.
Yeah.
The world is over. The
That
world
day,
is ending.
the first plane hit. It's like, oh God, we're staring at the TVs at home. The second one hit, and then I get the phone call from work. You need to come to work.
Sure.
So I was working at Fox at the time.
I think what was scary was I don't want to say it was close, but it was close enough to home that it was.
Well, yeah, it was only a couple.
It was almost. You were afraid that they were going to start flying buildings
200
into-
miles from you?
Yeah,
Because then the panic
you know.
is something's in the air. You
And
got to worry
then-
about toxins or somebody's poisoning.
But then you also had a plane that went down in rural Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah.
That's it's almost like saying it went down in my backyard.
I will say it was easier, I think, for me to view it even compressed because at least it was over by the time, or they thought it was over by the time 4:00 ran around.
And you probably
when you're
had
watching
more
it,
of an idea of what was going on rather than being like, oh God, we're literally under
as
attack.
it's happening, you have no idea when it's over or something. It's like when the
Right.
power goes out with a hurricane, you have no idea when that power is coming back on,
Right.
and that always sucks. So yeah, that was. I'm sure that probably affected you more than most.
I was just those days, that first day, those first 2 days at work, it was just like numb because the feeds that were coming in, the satellite Fox feeds, are the things. I think at the time they were like, we don't know what's going on. We're just going to start feeding the stations everything that we see.
Oh, wow.
And the stuff that was fed to us, some things I've still never seen on the internet that were just like crazy things that like this guy in an adjacent building has got his video camera and he's just watching the bodies fall, and you go down and you see like 10 or 12 of them like just out on the concrete.
Oh, God.
And he goes down he was about to go and zoom in to see like, am I really seeing this? And then the second plane hit, and then he quickly goes back up here. But that came off like the CNN feed. We had an agreement with CNN back then because we weren't officially a Fox station yet. We were just WOFL, Fox 35, unaffiliated. Not owned by Fox. So we got the CNN feeds that were coming like, what are they sending us? We're never going to be able to air this stuff.
Yeah.
But even at the time, they were like, this is happening to us. We need to let everybody see it, and they can decide each station if they want to air it or not.
I think one of the craziest things I saw was hand camera footage from somebody who was just a tourist, and they were, I guess, just videotaping down at the bottom of the towers or around the vicinity of the towers, and you just hear a loud explosion and then look up, and it was the first plane that hit, and it's everywhere, and it's just like the magnitude of it. It was just.
Didn't this podcast take a
got
strange
really
turn?
wet.
Didn't it?
We got dark.
Took a
So
strange
okay,
turn.
so let's bring it back around.
Yes, let's do that.
Let's talk about your podcast real quick before we wrap up.
The Gods and Monsters podcast.
What's left of it? We've
We
got
will-
one
we will
episode
proceed.
left
We will
at this
continue.
location.
Yeah.
And it's called the Gods and Monsters. I never even called it the Gods and Monsters show. I just didn't want it to take away from the brand of Gods and Monsters, so I just called it Gods and Monsters.
Yeah.
But when you go to the YouTube page, because the name was already taken on YouTube, it's
Stupid
youtube.com/
Lana, whatever her name is.
Gods Monsters Show. So that's what we are, and you can find it. We always put the episodes up on the Gods and Monsters Facebook page
And
anyway.
of course, we'll link everything in our show notes.
Oh,
So
please,
Cool.
please. So next week will be our last episode here at the Artigan.
we even list the Gods and Monsters page as a friend of the podcast in our links section on our
very
website.
good.
So
Well, unlike Deep Six, we're not very good at spreading out and putting us everywhere. So we're really only on Facebook and
YouTube. Because it's a
Hey.
video podcast. We thought it was going to be a visual podcast.
let me tell you this: it's not easy.
No, we know, and that's why.
It's
that's why
it's
we're bad
very
at this.
intimidating.
I wanted to do a video podcast through the iTunes. Oh, the steps you got to go through to do
Really?
that.
Oh,
I thought it would just be like, okay, do this, upload this here.
You gotta pay to be on iTunes.
It's just, I
No.
wasn't going to do that because YouTube is awesome. It's free.
yeah, YouTube's easy.
You don't necessarily need to pay to be on iTunes, but I mean, when you start talking about bandwidth, if you get enough
Yeah.
people watching, then you run into issues because iTunes doesn't directly host the files. It's
Right.
just a stop measure.
YouTube
from
is
one to
great
the other.
because it's unbelievable to think that it's free because it's archived everything we've ever done in HD.
Mhm.
And it's going to keep it up there forever. A couple of those episodes, you just randomly pick an episode number 56, and it's like 4-hour episode that we did because it was something live that we did here. It's like that's there forever, and that's amazing that that's still free.
Well, they make their money though, because I mean, they
Ads.
make their money.
Yeah,
it's
but-
becoming the new medium. I mean, it's replacing television.
Sure.
I watch far more YouTube than I watch television.
You subscribe to YouTube channels, and that's how you
Yeah.
get stuff. Yes.
In fact,
YouTube
and
even has a
soon-
pay feature now.
Soon, I will actually start getting paid.
On the Miata page?
Mhm.
Son of a bitch. Look at that. He started that less than a year ago.
How many subscribers you got?
A little over 800.
Wow.
And
Send some of them our way.
growing pretty quickly. Yeah.
So what
you
he
guys
does
need
is
to promote that you were on this show. In the next episode of your car, you should be listening to it on the radio.
it's on his YouTube page. It's called like, hey, I have a Miata. I don't know what it's called.
Hey, I have a
and it's
or
like
three.
something on the car is either broken or needs to be fixed, or it's just like, what does this thing do? And he kind of just fixes things and figures things out along the way. It's
and showing all my fails too at
Right.
the same time, because people want to see how to do it wrong, so they don't do it wrong.
I think that's the appeal of your channel, because I've gone and watched it knowing nothing about cars, but you're just a regular dude who's doing car stuff
Yeah.
and being a regular dude about it. You're not like talking in super specific terms and things
Right.
like that.
And you're right. I've seen other people work on their cars, and they only do the steps, and it's just like this rapid fire doing the steps, and it's like that's great for being like if you really want to just instructional, just kind of to do it, but it's not. It's interesting. It's not fun to watch.
a lot of times you turn the camera on, you hit record, and whatever it is you're about to do, you don't know how it's going to end.
Nope.
You just kind of do, all right, I got this part. I'm going to put it on the car and take the old part out. Let's see what happens.
Yep.
That's what's cool about it,
basically
because
what it is.
you and the viewer are going through the same experience. That's what's cool about it.
Real quick, I know you mentioned it already. Where can they find everything related to you? Are you on Twitter, Facebook, those things?
Yes, I'm on
or-
Twitter at Overtime with Art Miles. That was the name of the show that I did. I just kept that Twitter page.
Oh, I finally looked at your
A Vimeo page.
Vimeo,
I have a
yeah.
Vimeo
You got
page
tons
called
of stuff on
Overtime
there.
with Art Miles. I still haven't put those original 6 episodes that I did on ABC. I haven't put those up yet. They're still on mini DV tapes.
I want to see those.
So that's Vimeo Overtime with Art Miles, Twitter Overtime with Art Miles. But most importantly is and Facebook.com/The News Remixed, the thing that I did at Fox 35 with
That's with
David.
David Martin.
Every episode is up there. We almost hit 200 episodes of that. We haven't done anything in the past few months just because we've been busy with other projects, but you can find that there. But most importantly, you can find me at the Gods and Monsters Facebook page, where we post all of our video podcasts.
Which, of course, everything will be linked in the show notes. Greg, where can they find you?
Well, I guess I'll spam my 2 YouTube channels. My YouTube channels is YouTube/Good Egg Productions, and I know that doesn't exactly explain Miata, but I chose that thing a long time ago. The other channel is it doesn't really even have a real name yet because I haven't hit 100 subscribers.
Is it 100? I thought you needed to hit
You need
200.
100. You need 100, and I'm at like 71.
That's
But-
okay. We've got
yeah.
a second podcast that we're doing, and we have a Facebook page for it. It doesn't even have 25 likes, and
Oh,
you can't name
well,
your
I'll-
Facebook page until...
I'll like it. You send me that link. I'll like it. Anyway, the second YouTube
It's
channel
a sports
with the
podcast. You might
with-
find some interest in
I
it.
might, yeah. Where I talk models into watching bad movies with me is called it's Models and Movies, and if you just do like a search on Models and Movies,
Or
you
if
will
you go to the
YouTube.
show notes.
you will literally find it.
What about your webpage where you have your photos?
Screw that webpage.
No, how dare you? You go to the webpage. It's called
it's goodeggproductions.com.
It's called check out my coolpictures.com. I don't know
It's
what it's called.
goodeggproductions.
And but then you can click a button and you can either look at the PG pictures,
oh, see
or you can look at the not so PG pictures. But they're super artistic stuff. I got one time. Greg invited me to come to his house.
Oh, that's right.
This
was an interesting story. Real quick.
This is the type of phone calls that Greg Mohn makes. Okay, he calls me up and he's like, "Hey, I need some help on a shoot. There's a girl coming over, and I need she's going to sit in a swimming pool, and he's got like the black paper that's going to be in there, and I just need somebody to shake the waves in the pool. So not great for podcasting, but there's a naked chick in the pool, and all you do is see me off to the side doing this. So forget, you don't need to see that, but it's just me shaking the side of the pool. And
I still thank you very much for doing that, because for whatever reason, I couldn't get anybody else to come over to do that.
But that's what Greg does, and he had one of these giant kid pools set up in his backyard with the black. I'm saying it wrong. Black paper, black.
It's bisqueen. It's plastic.
So that when you take
plastic.
pictures of it, it does cool reflections and stuff. But the water and it's reflecting, and the pictures turned out so good with this girl. She comes to the house, and
It was all your magic, Art.
Yeah, it was my magic.
Well, yeah, because
it was the appropriate amount of waves that we created.
It would not
that
have
way.
looked as good without you.
Because she was a real little girl. If I had done the waves too much, she would have drowned. So just light waves, and the pictures turned out so good. Greg's on a scaffolding above the
I'm
kid
8 feet
pool,
above the ground, yeah.
and he's taking pictures. And this girl is just totally trusting.
I think
Whatever.
I've seen some of the pictures that you're talking about from that shoot.
They're okay.
Yeah.
They're okay. But
Thanks.
go to that webpage. Promote that webpage, because that's a
I
cool
don't-
Unless
page.
you're under 18, don't
I
go
don't
to
even
that
have the
webpage.
pictures from that. I don't update that website very much, but
You're so focused on your cars now instead of your women.
I've seen you. You're on Instagram. I see some of your stuff on Instagram here and there.
I do have an Instagram / Good Egg Productions, but
okay.
I have very few. I think I've only done like 30 posts on Instagram. I need to get on that. I really need to have a bigger presence on social media.
But Greg's photography is pretty cool. You should check that out.
Thanks.
Just to see all the different women that he takes pictures with. Very, very artistic stuff. And it's I guess what you tell the women is you're only going to be a certain age for so long. So you should definitely take these pictures now, because you look awesome. And that's what he's been doing.
I like how Art has this fantasy in his head of what I do and how I do it and stuff like that.
Just let me have that.
Okay.
But yeah, of course, like I said a million times already, everything that you guys can be found on, we'll link it all in the show notes. We'll link the podcast,
Perfect.
the videos, all of
Cool.
it. And I guess this is the time where I spiel all of the Deep Six podcast
Yes,
crap out.
it's about time.
Of course,
How do we listen to this podcast?
you can listen to the Deep Six podcast through iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or Podbean. Please subscribe. It's a free thing to do. Why not? You'll get the newest episode as soon as it's published. Unlike if you'll just go and click on iTunes, you won't get it until about 24 hours after. What else? You can find us on social media over at Facebook. We're also on Twitter and Instagram. Of course, links to all of those can be found over on deep6podcast.com, spelled out one word.
not the Deep Six. That's
Just
somebody
Deep
totally
Six
different. We don't like those
podcast.com.
guys.
It's really fun when one of my co-hosts says Deep Six, it sounds like deep sex, and I'm just like, please don't ever go to that website.
Oh.
But yeah, until next time, this has been the Deep Six podcast. I'm Steven Spivak for Art Miles and Greg Mohn.
Thank you
of
so
the
much for having us.
Gods and Monsters podcast.
It was like therapy. It was nice talking about
It was
things
not
for a
bad.
while. I appreciate that. Thank you, Steven.
Not a problem. You guys are welcome to come back anytime. We can Skype you in, we can call you, we can do whatever.
Yeah, as soon as you can get the phone situation happening, I'll call in.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, that's been the Deep Six podcast. We'll see you later.